COVID-19, and probably this is the chance which gives us to learn about the uh, infection control practices. If you learn these infection control practices, you will be able to restrict this disease uh, from getting infected. Uh, So today's contents of the topics include the introduction, what is infection control, how do you implement these infection control practices in your professional life, and then what are the different modes of transmission, then modes of infection control, of course, what is the objective of the infection control, sepsis, which we know all, what are the different personal protective barriers, sterilization, disinfection. I'll just touch upon these two topics. And of course, this is not for you all laboratory infection control, but let's see if time permits, we will discuss that also. And then clinical waste disposal, I'm not going to discuss this today. We'll be learning this on Saturday. So coming to the definition of the infection control, also called as exposure control plan by OSHA. This is a organization, international organization for occupational health hazard hospital acquired infections. It is required office program that is designed to protect personnel, that is healthcare workers, from the risk of exposure to the infection. We all are working in the healthcare institutes, and there are chances that we suffer from various infections in the hospital also. So before going to actual the hospital infection control practices, we must know about the definition of the infection. So infection is nothing but the any foreign body which enters into a host generates the immune response in the form of either antibody production or generation of various immune cells, that is cell mediated immune response. So this is the infection, and community acquired infection is the infection which acquires during stay at your home. Like for example, now malaria or any other, or even the uh, cholera, all these infections you have acquired during your home. So when a patient admits in the hospital, and after 24 hours or 48 hours of admission in the hospital, if the person experience the new infection which were not there at the time of admission in the hospital, are called as the hospital acquired infection, or they're also called as the nosocomial infections. We must know which are the hospital acquired infections or the nosocomial infections. This definition we all know now. We have learned this quite some time. The sterilization is a process of physical or chemical procedure to destroy all the microorganisms, including the bacterial spores. And we know that why bacterial spores have been included, because they are heat resistant or thermostable. If your process is able to kill the spores, it means that your sterilization cycle is achieved. Sterilization means the destruction of all forms. This was given by the term by Ronald B. Luftig. And then sterilization is the process of killing or removing all viable microorganisms. What is sterile? Sterile is free from all the living microorganisms, usually described as a probability. For example, the probability of a surviving microorganism being 1 in 1 million. So this is sterile. Disinfection, we all know, it is a chemical process where all the pathogenic microorganisms are killed or destroyed, but it does not necessarily kill the spores. So disinfection is not appropriate for the instruments which are going to penetrate the patient body. Disinfection is less lethal than the sterilization. We all know this now, because it destroys the majority of recognized pathogenic microorganisms, but does not necessarily kill the spores, because it is not what you can say effective in destroying the spores. Disinfection is a process of removing or killing most but not all viable organisms. So there are chances that due to disinfection, there might be some load of microorganisms on the instrument or any surfaces which you are trying to disinfect. So such instruments are not useful for penetrative procedures, like if you are penetrating inside the mucous membrane. So they might generate the infections. And one of the source of acquired infection is the instruments which have been not properly sterilized because they have been disinfected only. And what is disinfectant? It's a chemical agent used on inanimate object to destroy virtually all recognized pathogenic microorganisms. For example, if you are working in the operation theater, you just have to disinfect the operation table. So it is the process which is carried out on the inanimate object. And if the same process is carried out on the human tissue, it is called as the sepsis, and the agent is called as antiseptic agent. Asepsis, again, one of the important term. It's a prevention of microbial contamination of living tissues or sterile material by excluding, removing, or killing microorganisms. So asepsis is a task where you are performing any procedure on your patient without contaminating the procedure or the wound, whatever you are taking care of that patient. Now, coming to the modes of disease transmission, there are several modes of transmission of diseases, either in the generally in the perspective of the hospital acquired infections. First and foremost is the direct contact with blood or body fluids. We all are working in the healthcare workers, and we come in cross with the patient's blood and body fluids. And if you are not wearing the personal protective equipments, then there is a chances of direct contact of these infectious fluid, and you may, as a healthcare worker, acquire the infections if you are not practicing the personal protective equipments. Indirect contact with a contaminated instrument or surface, as I earlier was telling about, the if your disinfection practices or sterilization task practices are not in place, and if you have disinfected this surgical instrument only, and then you have doing some penetrative procedure on your patient, that may lead to infection to the patient, because disinfection is not a proper method of sterilization, because it is only going to kill the pathogenic microorganisms and not all pathogenic microorganisms. And of course, it is not effective in taking care of these spores also. So it depends. It is also one of the indirect method or indirect contact method for disease transmission into your patient. Contact of mucosa of the eyes, nose, or mouth with droplet or spatter. Now, this droplet word is very commonly used these days because of the COVID-19. When a patient is positive for COVID-19, he or she coughs out, sneezes out, or talking to someone, is generating lots of droplet nuclei in the air. And these droplet nuclei remain suspended in the air for quite some time. And the people who are around that patient will inhale those droplet nuclei and will get infection. So it is through the either through the eyes, nose, or mouth that can be transmitted to a person who is in the vicinity of that positive patient. So that is why you might have heard about every time when you are calling to any person, there is a ringtone coming out. Do gaj duri is essential, then mask is essential, and wash your hands frequently. So the reason is that if you come in contact with patient, you must have a proper distance to do not get the infection from those positive patients. Then inhalation of airborne microorganisms. If a person is tuberculosis positive and he or she is admitted in your hospital, and if you are keeping that patient with the what you can say with all other patients, there are chances that the person who is positive for tuberculosis will cough out the large number of tubercle bacilli in the droplet nuclei again, and that could be inhaled by the patient or people around that positive tuberculosis patient, and they may also at the risk of getting the infection. Modes of transmission in a graphical picture, there are 6 links in chain of transmission of infection. The infectious agent has to be there, of course, otherwise how infection will occur. then a reservoir has to be there. Your instrument is there, your positive patient is there, or healthcare worker hands are also one of the reservoirs. Then portal of exit, then means of transmission, of course, portal of entry, and then susceptible host. This is very important, of course. The people who are admitted in the hospital are always susceptible to various infections. Even a parasitic infection can cause infection in these susceptible hosts. And this is the chain of infection. This is how the modes of transmission of infection occurs in the hospital setups. So what are the objectives of infection control? It is not possible to say that we have a zero infection rate in our hospital. Uh, it is not possible to claim that we have the 0% of infection, because we are not aware from where we introduce infections into your patients or even to the healthcare workers. The people who are working in the hospital will also get infections. The best example is the needle stick injuries from a positive patient to a healthcare worker, either doctor, nurses, or paramedical workers. And those people will get the infections of hepatitis B, which is the quite commonly seen as a needle stick injury. So we never know from where these infections occur, either in the healthcare workers or in the patients who are admitted in the hospital. So our objective should be to reduce this burden of infection. As I said, we cannot claim 100% that we are having no infection, hospital and acquired infection in our setup. We cannot claim that. So what we can claim, yes, we have reduced. Our target is 5% infection rates of surgical site infections. So we have controlled that below target level. So whatever the target level is there, below that is quite commendable. That means you are trying your best to curtail the infection. So reduction is one of the important objective. How will you reduce these infections in the hospital setup? By implementing the infection control practices. And what are the different infection control practices? We will learn one by one in the later slides. By simplifying the method, we should not have the complicated uh, procedures or protocols which are difficult to implement. No, we have to simplify them and implement in the day-to-day practice in the hospital, so that you will protect yourself and also you will protect the patients also. So this is how the objectives of infection control work: reduction by implementation, of course with the simplification, and then thereby achieving the protection to the healthcare worker as well as the patient. Why, who, and what? These are the three questions in the infection control in the dentistry. Why is infection control necessary in dentistry? Dental staff and patients may be exposed to a wide variety of pathogenic microorganisms. So that is why we have to have the infection control practices in place, so that the people who are working in the dental setup, including patient as well as the staff, should not get any infection. So this is why we have to implement the infection control practices. Who is responsible for infection control in the dental office? Each member of the dental team must follow the recommended guidelines. It is not the one person job. Your supportive staff, like the one who is involved in the sterilization disinfection practices, or the one who is involved in the cleaning of your setup, clinical setup, or the doctor who is herself treating the patient, are responsible for these infection control practices, because each and every individual is exposed to different levels of risk of infection of in the setup. So everyone has to work with their own responsibility, so that you are not getting infection to yourself, and plus you're not you're curtailing or restricting the infection to your patients who are attending your clinics. What should be done to prevent the transmission of disease in the dental office? This is what we are going to learn by implementing individual infection control practices. The very simple practices is the hand wash. Probably you might have, as I told you, there is a ringtone in our mobile when you are trying to call the people. It says that uh, hand washing is very important. Why hand washing is important? See, there are two types of method by which you can maintain the hand hygiene. One is by with the soap and water, and second one by the hand rub. What is the importance of hand rub? When you have little amount of time between two patients, you don't have much time to go to the wash basin and wash your hands by applying soap and water, which takes some time. So if when you have no invasive procedure between two patients, that time when you are moving from one patient to another patient, you can use the hand rub. See, hand rubs are useful in masking that transient flora. It masks the transient flora. The final effective method is the hand wash. And how do you achieve by hand wash is by soap and water. And at least you must have 20 seconds procedure for that hand washing. Of course, I'm going to teach you the hand washing technique, which was given by the World Health Organization. There are 7 steps in the uh, practical discussion. So don't worry about that. So first and foremost, simplest, cost-effective method of infection control is the hand wash. The story behind hand wash is like there was a Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis, who was an obstetrician and gynecologist, who used to tell at that time in early, I mean 60s or before that also, that even if you wash your hands before the what you can say deliveries or cesarean section operative procedure on the pregnant women, you can reduce the mortality rate of from 90% to 30%. And at that moment of time, the contemporary gynecologists and obstetrician were making fun of him, Ignaz Semmelweis. How can it is possible by just washing your hands can reduce the infection rate in the pregnant women, postpartum infection, of course, after delivery, from 90% to 30%. And they were like, oh my God, he is mad. And so they did not believe him. And uh, I always tell this, that time there were Andhabhakts also who used to believe in these people, that how a person can reduce the infection rates from 90% to 30%. And they confronted with Ignaz Semmelweis. They beaten him up very badly because he was saying the one which the contemporary gynecologist or obstetrician were against of his statement. And what has happened? He succumbed to various injuries and he died due to the septicemia. And that was a very sad truth because of this Andhabhakta. And he has to sacrifice his life. Later on, after some year, the Florence Nightingale, who was a nurse actually in the Second World War, she used to move around into the hospitals by taking a lamp in her hand and taking care of the patient. And that is why she has been also referred as the lady with the lamp. And she used to take care of these patients, and she used to wash her hands. And she also narrated that yes, you can reduce the infection rate after post surgery by quite some 30% or 20%, whatever the rate. She also narrated the same thing. And then uh, later on, Joseph Lister, who was the father of antiseptic surgery, then he told to the world that yes, Ignaz Semmelweis, Florence were correct. Nightingale, Florence were correct. You can reduce the infection rate post-operative by such and such percentage. And then people will started realizing, oh my God, the Ignaz Semmelweis was right. And what happens now? Once the person has died, and then you are remembering him for his good deeds is no use. It's a waste of time and waste of resources also. So this is how people started realizing that hand washing is the simplest cost-effective method by which you can curtail the infection. This is how even now we can restrict the COVID-19 infection rate by just washing our hands. Then you can also use the gloves. This will come under personal protective equipment, gloves, face masks, then protective eyewear. Always remember when you are going in third year, when you are going to start your patient, patient care, then that time you must wear the protective eyewear. You can have a shield, face shield. You can have the goggles to cover up your eyes, because when a dentist is working on his or her patient, generating lots of aerosols during their micro procedures, and if you are not wearing the goggles or face shield, then there is a possibility of these droplet nuclei which can, or splashes which can go into your mucous membrane into the eyes, and that will lead to infections. And of course, you need to wear the protective clothing, attire, OT attire, gown, and all those things. And then instrument sterilization disinfection practices must be in place. This is very important. If your sterilization and disinfection practices are not in place, you are going to increase the rate of infection in your patient. Diseases transmission in the dental office. Diseases transmission in dental office. The dental office should have an infection control program to prevent the transmission of disease from the following: patient to the dental team. Of course, this best example is the hepatitis C or hepatitis B. If you are not wearing personal protective equipment, if you are getting radialistic injury, it is possible that if the patient is positive for hepatitis C or hepatitis B or HIV, a person who is treating that patient might get injury, and he or she may also get the infection. Then dental team to the patient. If you are not well, you are coughing out, you are having certain signs and symptoms, and you are trying to treat your patient, that is also not good. So you must take care of yourself also. There's a possibility that a dental professional can also transmit infection to his or her patient. And patient to patient, do pay for number of patients are sitting in your waiting room without any shows. Nowadays social distancing is very important. At least 2 meter ki duri banani zaruri hai. So if you don't have that much space, you must at least ask them to wear mask and sit, and without talking, of course. That is also important, because patient to patient can also lead to the transmission of infection. Then dental office to the community include dental's family. The one who is working in the dental clinics can take these infections to their respective homes, and it is possible that from them it may transmit to their family members, and then from community to dental clinics also, and then to the patient. Vice versa can also be possible of transmission of infection. So to prevent such infections, following is a list of all those procedures and precautions that together constitute the infection control. See, there is no one method, perfect method to take care of the reduction in the infection control practices. As I narrated in the previous slide, there are 6 or 7 steps. There are more than that also. I have just narrated a few of them. So there are few more also which you can implement in your practices, and by which you can reduce the infection rate in the dental clinics. These guidelines should be followed each time treatment is performed. Of course, it should be a habitual, it should be a habit that you are implementing these practices meticulously. The way we worship our God religiously, similarly, we should also implement these practices religiously in our clinic, so that we are not transforming the infection from patient to doctors, or from doctors to the patient, or patient to patient, all these things. Okay, because we are never certain of the patient status, no one will tell you what type of infection that person is suffering, because they don't have symptoms at that moment of time. For example, hepatitis B. If a person is chronic carrier for hepatitis B, how will you come to know by just looking at that patient? Not possible. So you have to assume all the patients are potentially infectious. Assume, as I'm saying, mind this word, assume, because you cannot tell them. You just have to assume, and you have to implement all the infection control practices, either because they themselves do not know, or because they have chosen not to inform their healthcare providers of their condition. Sometimes patients also hide their positive status of HIV or hepatitis C or hepatitis B, because some people do not like to reveal their status of positivity. So at that moment of time, what is in your hand? In your hand, you have to implement the infection control practices. So following these guidelines for every patient is called as standard precautions. Previously, it is used to call as universal precautions. Universal precautions, because it has been universally practiced. Now, why they have changed to standard precautions? As I told you, you will never come to know who is positive and who is negative. So assuming each and every person who is patient who is coming to your clinic might be positive, for potentially infectious viruses or bacteria. So assuming that, you have to follow the precautions. That is why it is called as standard precautions. Now, what are the standard precautions? Immunization. We all are waiting like, what you can say, to meet a god like that. Now the vaccines are available in our country. There are lots of controversies going on whether it is effective or not. But right now you have to take it. Whether it is effective or not effective, later on we will come to know. But you have to take it. Whatever the available vaccines are there, we have to take it. Of course, under the guidance of the expert physicians. Of course, we cannot take on our own. You have to take care of your health also, because if you are having a risk factors, then you have to be very careful by for taking these vaccines. So immunization, hepatitis B, you all have been vaccinated for hepatitis B in your first year, so that now you are you can prevent the hepatitis B injuries. So you will not suffer from the hepatitis B because you have been vaccinated. You have a seroconversion, means you have a antibody titer in your body, and which will take care of the invading pathogens such as hepatitis B. And we are also trying to get vaccinated for the COVID-19. Similarly, there are other infections which can be taken care of by immunization. Okay, like H1N1 nasal shot was available, so that can also be useful for. We take BCG vaccine, so we don't suffer from the tuberculosis also. So there are lots of immunization programs which will help you to prevent these infections. Then patient screening. Why it is essential to screen the patient? Because as I said, you will not be able to judge a person whether he or she is positive for certain pathogens such as hepatitis B or HIV. So you must screen the patient and find out the status of positivity. And if sometimes the patient does not agree to screen himself or herself, so assume that the person might be positive. So you have to take these standard precautions. Hand washing, very important, cost effective. It doesn't require much instrumentation. It doesn't require much cost. You just have to follow the 20-second protocol. You might have seen the advertisement on the TV. Bunty, tera sabun slow hai kya? So that person is dhote jao. The person is it's not that you are washing your hands for 1 minute or 2 minutes. Not. You just have to wash for 20 seconds. That is enough to remove all the transient flora which is there on your hand. Then barrier technique. What is barrier technique? That means you are curtailing something. Personal protective equipment such as mask, gloves, attire, shoe cover, face shield. All these will come under the personal protective equipment. Or rubber dam pre procedure rinsing. Sometimes you can ask your patient to rinse his or her mouth with the chlorhexidine, so that MRSA, if it is there in your patient mouth, oral, that will be taken care of. Okay. Then needle and sharp instrument safety. This is very important. When you are performing any procedure on your patient with the syringes, you should not try to recap the needles. You have to directly discard that needle, burn that needle, and discard the syringes in the red bag. That we'll learn in the next lecture, biomedical waste management. But you must take care of needle and sharp injuries, and that can lead to infections like hepatitis B, because it is a occupational exposure to blood and body fluids. Then instrument sterilization disinfection, very important, very important. If you are using the surgical instruments, and then you have to go for the sterilization procedure by autoclaving and not by other methods, not by disinfection at all, because it will not take care of the spores. Then surface disinfection. Whenever you are we have finished your job on your dental chair, you must clean that dental chair with some proper disinfecting solutions. It is very essential nowadays. You might have seen, even if you are going a barber shop, that person is putting some disinfecting the chair. Okay, so you have to take care of that. Even you are then radiographic asepsis. You have to be very cautious whenever you are taking X-rays of your patient. That time you follow all the aseptic task on your patient. Then laboratory asepsis, which is not your part, but that could be one of the standard precautions which can be used to minimize the infections. Then infections, dental waste management and disposal. This I am going to cover up in the next chapter, because this chapter is little elaborative. Now, coming to the personal protective equipment, OSHA requires the employer to provide employees with appropriate personal protective equipment. You might have seen in our college also, the gloves, masks are provided to the students who are actually taking care of the patient. And what are the examples of personal protective equipments? Protective clothing. We all are wearing the aprons. When you are working in the on the patient, you must have a special OT attire. Then surgical mask is essential. N95 is very important, not these green mask. Then face shield, very important. Remember this. When you are going in third year, when you are going to have your own patient, then you must utilize the face shields nowadays because of this COVID-19 episode. Then protective eyewear. Even if you are having that face shield, still you have the goggles on your eyes. That is double protection. Then disposable patient treatment gloves, of course, waste management protocols, and use of heavy duty utility gloves. These PPE must be used whenever you perform tasks that could produce splashes or spatter, and your procedures are so micro procedures that will generate lots of aerosols. So that is why you have to wear all these personal protective equipment. Whenever you feel that you are in contact with the blood and body fluids of a patient, that time also you have to wear these PPE. The chances are that you might get infected with the blood and body fluids. You should wear all these equipments. Then perform when you're performing the other clinical activities that require handling of contaminated items, for example, radiographs, impressions, dentures, or contaminated equipment and surfaces. As I told you, hand hygiene, simplest, cost effective. Hand washing is the single most important procedure for preventing the spread of infection. That is why हाथ आपके हाथ धोते रहिए. Why they are saying? Because you never know where you are touching your hands on the railings, on the common platforms like lifts, or your in the clinics. You are handling the chairs, so we never know where these droplet nuclei have settled down, and you are contaminating your hands, and ultimately you are uh, covering your face or touching your face, nose, mouth with your bare hand, and then those can be a source of infection. So what is important? Whenever you are working with the patient, either you wear the gloves or you wash your hands between the patients. And I will explain you these procedures in detail in the practical in the practical discussion. Hand washing is also required if you touch contaminated instruments or surface during working, as I told you. And how will you achieve this? By using the liquid soap during hand washing. So you have to wet your hands and then wash with soap and water with ample amount of water and soap, and then it should be carried out within 15 to 20 seconds. And what are the different moments of hand hygiene? There are 5 moments of hand hygiene. One is the before touching the patient. Second one is the after touching the patient. Third one is the before any aseptic task. Fourth one is the after touching the patient surroundings. And fifth one is uh, before any aseptic task. So these are the 5 moments of hand hygiene where you are going to wash your hands. Okay. Infection control during the pre-treatment period. The process of infection control begins during the period of preparation for clinical care. Whenever you are preparing the patient, you must follow all the barrier precautions. You must be ready with the sterile packs or whatever is required for taking care of that patient. So this is pre-control, pre-treatment period. Okay. Paying attention to infection control at this time have several payoffs, because if you do not take care whatever is required before taking patient on your chair, then it will have more chances of getting infection. So already whenever you are preparing your patient, see to that you all have the infection control practices in the place. In addition to reducing the risk of transmission of infectious agents during patient care, thinking ahead will make the treatment session more efficient. Of course, you are going to reduce the chances of infection by pre-thinking, and will also make the post-treatment infection control process easier and more effective. Very important. So pre-treatment infection control is very important. So what are those? Remove unnecessary items from the dental procedure area. You cannot keep too many items on the dental chair or near the dental chair. Whatever is required, you must keep with that. Do not at all keep overcrowded your chair or your nearby area. Okay, that will increase the chances of infection. The dental procedure area should be arranged to facilitate a thorough cleaning following each patient. Of course, when you're done with the patient, you must clean the area properly. Then what is the next plan? Pre-plan the materials needed during treatment. It should not be such a like that. Hey, this is not there. You please bring it. Don't do that. Whatever items is required, make a checklist and make a checklist of 20 items, 25 items, whatever is required, and start before taking patient care. Just take it. Yes, this is there. This is there. This is there. This is there. Okay, this is not there. Bring it. Sometimes you might forget also that it's we all are human. We made to make some mistakes, so it's okay. So, but you must take care all the precautions. You have a checklist and just take it. Okay, set out all instruments, medications, impression material, and other items that are needed for a procedure. Very important. Thinking ahead, minimize the need to search for additional items or to enter cabinets and drawers once gloves have become contaminated. You cannot do like that. You have already wearing the gloves and now you're touching some drawers or almirah and finding out that instrument or that material. Not good. You are contaminating your gloves. So avoid this. Always remember, utilize disposable items whenever possible. Whenever possible, use the disposable item, one time single use item. And if it is not possible for you to utilize the single use item, then you have to have the sterilization disinfection practices in place so that you can reuse them by going through applying through the proper sterilization disinfection practices. Use pre-arranged tray setups for routine or frequently performed procedures. You know that if certain procedure requires these number of items and certain procedure requires only these number of items, so decide what procedure you are going to have on your patient. According to that, prepare those setups in that manner itself. You don't keep too much instruments for a simple procedure and too less attempts for a complicated procedure. Don't do this. This will increase your burden of infections. Use individualized sterilized burr blocks for each procedure. This is very important. Using individualized burr blocks containing only the burrs required for that procedure helps to eliminate the contamination of other unneeded burrs and to make cleanup easier. Of course, if you have too much items in one place, you are going to increase the chances of infections. Then if indicated, have the rubber dam setup on the tray. Very important. Use always rubber dam setup on the tray. When rubber dam will be used during a clinical procedure, it also should be included on the tray setup. In addition, include those items needed for high velocity evacuation. Then identify those items that will become contaminated during treatment. This is very important. You have to identify those items which will become potentially contaminated during treatment, of course. While preparing the dental procedure area prior to beginning of clinical procedure, consider which items will become contaminated during treatment. This is very important. You have to consider that which item is going to get contaminated during the treatment. Example of such surfaces include countertops, light handles, because you are touching many times that the light, you are adjusting the light and you are touching that constantly. So that can become potentially contaminated. Then X-ray unit heads, tray tables, etc. So that is those are the different places where you can consider that it could be a potentially contaminated area. Then decide whether to use a barrier, a plastic wrap to prevent contamination of these surfaces and items, or to disinfect them with the procedure is complete. We have to use the disposable items, or you have to minimize the area not to contaminate by keeping too much items at the same place. Then surface barriers. Whenever you are doing your procedure, after your procedure, you must clean the surface areas of your dental chair and in and around. Surface barriers are used to prevent contamination on the surface underneath. You have to take care of entire chair by cleaning with the appropriate disinfecting solutions. All the surface barriers should be resistant to fluids in order to prevent microorganisms, saliva, blood, and other liquids from soaking through the back. Of course, your chair should not absorb the material. It should be water resistant. What will happen when your chair is getting contaminated with the blood and body fluids or splashes? It might absorb those material and will have those potential pathogens in it, and that may become the source of infection. So we have to be very careful. So this is how you need to arrange neatly, properly without making too much crowd. See how beautifully it has been arranged before going for a procedure. See, these are the drawers where you can see there is a plastic cover which has been stick to the handles. So whenever we have done with this, you can remove those plastic covers from that end of the day, and you can dispose of properly. See the area of mouthwash is so clean and kept under the cover of plastics also. So these are the things which you will take care during your patient care. Okay. Then review patient records before initiating treatment. This is very important. And place a radiograph on the view box. This is also important. This will reduce your burden. Okay. Always place a radiograph on the view box. Do not leave the record on the countertop or handle it after beginning of the treatment. So first take everything and then start working on the patient. Place the record in a drawer or out of the dental procedure area so that it should not become contaminated. Okay. Entries into the record should be done before and after the procedure. Very important. Whatever the entries related to the patient must be recorded. And this is how you can keep the x-rays or so that it is visible. You should have your notes ready before taking care of the patient and after taking care of the patient. Okay. Prepare personnel involved in patient care. You have to prepare your subordinates for following the infection control practices. If they don't know anything, then there are chances that they might also add to the infections to the patient and to yourself also. So an essential pre-treatment procedure is the preparation of all personnel involved in the patient care. Not only the instruments and patient care, the chair, you have to inform your colleagues also. This includes the utilization of personal protective equipment. They should also wear gown, eyewear, mask, and gloves, and also perform the hand hygiene. Of course, these are the personal protective equipments which we generally use like gloves, mask, apron, or OT attire. Okay. Then infection control during the treatment period, it is very essential. When you are actually now performing a procedure on the patient, you must have the infection control practice in place. The infection control procedures described in the previous period will help you to reduce the risk of transmission of infectious agents. All procedures what we have learned now will help you to reduce the transmission of infectious agent to the patient, to the healthcare worker, and to the community. During treatment, there are additional precautions that can be taken to further reduce infections, such as use care when receiving, handling, or passing sharp instruments. You cannot pass a needle projecting towards your staff. Take this. Don't do that. You should keep it in a tray and then you should hand over the tray. Otherwise, what will happen? It might get injury to your subordinate also. Take special precautions with syringes and needles, as I told you. Use a rubber dam whenever possible. Very important. Avoid touching unprotected switches, handles, and other equipments once gloves have been contaminated. If you are sure now you have done something to your patient and the same contaminated gloves you are handling with the drawers, computer, screens, don't do that. Or you are touching your nose, don't do that. So you are increasing the chances of infection. Avoid entering cabinets once gloves have been contaminated. You remove the gloves and then enter wherever you want to enter. Okay. Do not perform the switches and computers with the gloves. Don't do that. You remove the gloves and then you handle the computers and all this. This is how you cannot handle the phone, or you cannot touch your face with the gloved hand which is contaminated with the blood and body fluid. Don't do that. Do not handle your records when you are wearing the gloves. Don't do that. These are things not to be done. Huh? Don't I'm showing this because doesn't mean that you have followed. No. You don't have to follow all these things. Okay. Remember this. Then post treatment is also important. What we will do, continue to wear personal protective equipment during cleanup. Don't remove immediately. When you have done everything, you have cleaned the patient area, you have cleaned the chair, you have cleaned the other equipments, then only you remove your the setup. Okay. After patient care is completed, begin the cleaning and disinfection process by removing contaminated gloves. The gloves which have been potentially contaminated with the blood and body fluids must be removed. Okay. Used during treatment. Wash your hands and use the utility gloves before beginning the cleanup. Now you wear the new gloves and then do other things. Okay. Continue to wear protective eyewear, mask, and gown. This is very important. Remove all disposable barriers. All of the barriers placed before treatment, including light handle covers and countertop barriers, should be removed. Now clean and disinfect all items not protected by the barriers. Cleaning and disinfection of the dental treatment room surfaces are important components in an effective infection control program. Very important. It has to be cleaned properly. Surfaces has to be cleaned properly. The laboratory studies have proved that microorganisms may survive on the environmental surfaces for a long time. We have known, example is Mycobacterium tuberculosis, may survive for weeks. If the patient is positive for tuberculosis, then that patient is coughing out, sneezing out, and those droplet nuclei will remain on the surfaces for a long time. And if you're contaminating your hands with those surfaces by touching surfaces, it is possible that you will get the infection. So clean the surfaces area properly. See, this is how you must have everything in place. Okay. Now sterilization and disinfection dental instrument. This I'm not going to touch up now because we have studied in detail the sterilization disinfect chapter. So I'm not going to this. We also studied the critical, what are the critical instruments, what are the semi-critical, non-critical. Based upon that, whether you go for a sterilization procedure or disinfection procedures. Okay. If you are having the critical instruments, you must go with the steam sterilization, that is autoclave. If you have a semi-critical, you just go for the disinfection procedures. And if you have a non-critical item, you should only clean with them, clean with the soap and water also. So that is very important. This is all about the infection control practices. If you just stop